Today, every organization is excited about AI. Companies are spending somewhere between 30 to 40 billion dollars on generative AI. But here is the problem, which is a real problem. 95% of enterprise AI proof of concepts are failing. We know that. And this number tell a very, very scary story. Menlo Venture says 37 billion was spent on Gen AI in 2025 alone. Yet, study after study shows that these initiatives are not delivering any measurable ROI. Organizations are stuck in what is called pilot purgatory. They have got the pressure to adopt AI. They are writing the checks, but they can't figure out how to turn AI usage into actual business value. So, how do you close this massive gap between AI investment and return from it? That's exactly what we are going to find out in this episode of the Agentic Enterprise with Arti Raman, CEO and founder of Portal26. Arti, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share what my company is about and what we're up to.
This is exciting. First of all, I feel that this is the first time you and I are talking, and this is the first time I also heard about the company Portal26. So personally, and I'm pretty sure our audience will also be curious to know, since you're also founder of the company, what is Portal26 all about? It's 2026, for 2026. What are the problem even today? Because we see that most of the problems have been solved already. Nothing has to be solved yet. So what are the problems that you still felt needed to be solved that led you to create this company? When was the company created? What problem you're trying to solve? Let's talk about that first.
Absolutely. So Portal26 was created to help companies adopt generative AI in a way that actually makes a difference. And with AI and everything AI, there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of pressure to adopt. But there are three different areas where how well you do in those areas impacts whether generative AI investments actually pay off or not. And the first of those is visibility. This is one technology where adoption is far ahead of governance and security. Everyone's using it, whether or not you are caught up as an organization or not. And so being able to see where it's used and how it's used and why it's used is really important, because then you know where it makes a difference, right? So that's about visibility. And the first things we do is, like we tell our customers, we just turn the lights on, right? You're in a dark room, you don't know what's happening, you turn the lights on, you can see. So that's one big, powerful reason. The second is security, right? AI is unlike any other technology before in that it retains context, it can further be used to make models more intelligent and all of those things. So there is a big security concern, especially with people that are unmonitored or unsanctioned, and they start putting data into public models. Even if your models are not public, it's a problem because whatever you put in, it can come out. So the question of who's allowed to ask what, even with internal information, matters. And then models can be attacked and all this. So security as its own, cybersecurity, takes a whole new meaning when it comes to AI. So that's a second big reason Portal26 exists. And the third big reason is ROI. Like, what is the point of doing all of this if you're not better off and your business is not better off? And AI is even though the costs are coming down, overall, it's a pretty expensive proposition and lots of money going in. So we exist to solve these problems, make sure it's visible, make sure it's secure, make sure it's paying off. And this company was actually started back in 2019 when there wasn't all this hype, etc. And at that time, we were purely focused on the data security side of it. Over the years, starting 2023, we have launched this full AI adoption platform, etc. So very exciting times, very, very strong value proposition. And we definitely no longer have to convince people that this is a problem. There's a lot of awareness already.
The challenge is that everybody gets excited about the next shiny object in the market. They start using it. They put a lot of money in there. That also kind of creates a bubble. But what we have seen is that most enterprise AI proof of concept, they fail almost more than 90%. They fail. And this failure rate is disturbing. Can you talk about, based on your own interaction with customers and the problem that you're solving for them, what is actually causing this big disconnect between what companies are investing in AI and what they're getting back? Because you mentioned ROI is also a really important aspect of yours. So let's look at the market reality. What is causing this failure?
So the market reality is very stark. It's between 5 and 15% success rate. That's very low, given that there are billions of dollars going in every quarter. And what we have found is there are basically two big reasons for failure, and one is much bigger than the other. So the first one is that the projects that are being conceived out of basically brainstorming, top-down brainstorming, right? Companies are bringing in consulting firms and, having their leadership get together and say, where do you think we should automate using AI? Where should we build agents? Where should we build AI powered workflows? And everybody has really good ideas. Everybody has ideas. But this hit rate for these ideas is literally like, 5 out of 100. Whereas people at the grassroots level, they have already found where AI makes a difference. It's there in the organization. And so what we find is that customers don't have a way to harness user and usage information on where AI really makes a difference. And so selecting the right projects is the first and biggest gap. Second gap is security. So you can build and, at some point, if it's not compliant, if it's not secure, if it's not transparent, it doesn't meet your regulatory obligations or your audit obligations, well, it's not allowed to go into production. But we really find that 80% of the problem is in picking the right ones. 20% of the problem is in security. And that's why we recently launched this value realization platform that says, listen, there is actually technology that can sit on your network, like ours, of course, that can capture all these demand signals. Let's understand what people are trying to do. And these could be your employees or these could be your users if you have, a product, a different kind of product that's externally facing. And so by marrying those two, we can actually tell you what are the use cases, right? And so we think, and in our experience on the ground, making that connection, it improves that conversion rate from 5 to 15% to like 80 to 95%. And that's a very big jump. And when you think about it, it's pretty simple. Like, listen to what your customers want, or put your ear to the ground on demand. But in an enterprise setting where there's so much chaos, so much usage, it's hard to do, and that's why you kind of need a platform.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about the big chunk where most of the failure is happening, and let's also talk about the AI value realization solutions that you folks are building, where it more or less like look like uh, how user behavior based, more or less like it's not like looking at just the data. Talk a bit about how does it work in reality, and how is it fundamentally different from how companies have been approaching this. And after that, we'll talk about if you have customers who have used it, unless I'm pretty sure that you have some beta customers where they came back with feedback that before we use that, this is how our teams used to work, and now suddenly our day-to-day operations have changed. So there are three-part question. Number one is the biggest problem, an AI value realization solution, how it works, and then what changes customers will actually feel.
In the world of value realization, there are three different portions to that module. So the first one is, and actually before I tell you that, I'll back up and give you an example of why we built this in the first place. So every feature, every solution we build is built with design partners. So there's nothing we are putting out that some customer isn't already using in production. So that's really good. So what was happening with our customers was that they were paying for licenses for AI based on actual demand from their leaders. So head of engineering would say, we need to use AI powered software development because there are peer benchmarks that show that productivity for developers is going up between 3x and 10x. And that's awesome. So they will go out and they will license these tools, right? So as they go out and license these tools, when they turn on Portal 26, they have really strange discovery. They'll say, well, we're paying $30 per engineer per month for two different tools. That's $60 per engineer per month in a 1,000-person company. That's a lot. Yet we are seeing 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 times a month our developers are going to ChatGPT and they're going to DeepSeek to write production code. So the question is, why are developers going to ChatGPT and DeepSeek to write production code when you have access to these tools, right? And because our platform can take this apart and look at it, we realize that what was licensed and what was needed is actually there's a big gap, and the devil is in the details. Like what are really the requirements of what people need to solve? And if you're going to license two tools, what are the two different tools you should license, right? So this is kind of how this was born, where our customers were saying, can you actually first analyze the demand? Let's look at where production code is being written, what is going into prompts, how are developers using it, and then let's back into where we should make the investment. Because when we do that, we're licensing the right tools. We know who the power users are. We know what the, what the big value proposition is between one tool and the other. And so the first part of that value realization platform is actually license intelligence. That's a module that we released as well independently. And what that does is it looks at everything that's licensed, and it tells you what are the public tools that compete, how much of the licensed tool are your users utilizing, and all of this, optimization and understanding of that. The second piece of the value realization is something that we call risk value analytics. So you might have something that's used a lot, but it might be very high risk. So you might be uploading sensitive customer data to an, public fraud analytics tool because it's just so good, right? So, or you might have customer support that's being done using public models, but customer support is a really high value use case because AI really actually does help with customer support. And so the risk value analytics is the second module. And we are basically extracting use cases and showing that. And the third is this bit that I've been talking about earlier, which is where we'll tell you what the demand is. And based on what you know the demand is, you license certain tools, or you build agents, or you build applications, or you do things like that. So for our users, tactically, this means you turn on the product. Within a couple of weeks, it's going to start organizing all that usage into use cases and demand, signals, and will basically give you a recommendation. And that recommendation can be rolling over time, and all your AI leaders and functional leaders can get a sense of what the users need. So tactically, it kind of looks like this in an organization. Behaviorally, what our customers are seeing is that many of them have invested in agent studios or agent building platforms, right? This is like all the rage right now. So they have the capability to spin up agents and hook them up to data resources and application resources in the organization, right? So when you turn on Portal26, now you have a pipeline of high value, high impact, high ROI use cases that can be fed into these other platforms, right? And so now everything that comes out of your agent studio is something that you know is going to be used, you know who to deploy it to, and all of that process now, you get a lot more ROI from your investment in those products as well. And so it's a nice ecosystem play where the agent studios and the CFO's office, as well as our product, works really closely together to produce that impact.
You also gave, you talked about, and which is reality, that a lot of employees, they use their personal AI tools like ChatGPT, Cloud, which may also create a lot of data leak because they are putting sensitive information, and there is no zero retention policy depending on what you're using. So organizations don't really have any visibility into how their employees are embracing AI. I don't know about what kind of clientele you folks have, but it could be heavily regulated industries, and those developers may know about that. But does this platform that you're building also help organizations not build gates for their employees, but in a way guardrails so they can still play safely with the tools, but not put either company data at risk or make any security related compromises?
That's a very big pillar of the product, because remember I mentioned three things, like can I see it, can I secure it, and is it paying off? And in the security bucket, all of that falls, and you need like three different elements. So you need to make sure something that's really bad doesn't go out in the first place. Because teaching someone after the fact is fine, but if you're regulated or if you have other, sensitive information, intellectual property, trade secrets, anything like that, IP, you don't want it going out. So we have a product that will actually stop it from going out. If it catches something that shouldn't be, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like a credit card number or a social security number, it could just be company contextual information that shouldn't go out, it will stop it. The other thing it will do is it will analyze those behaviors as well. So you can get a sense of, what are your top risk areas with respect to sensitive data or privacy or IP? Are there people that are more prone to risky behavior than others? And what kind of policy should you have, right, to both prevent this as well as educate your users? So that's like that element is there as well. And then finally, when something bad happens or is attempted to take place, the platform can educate the user as well. So it can say, hey, we noticed you tried to do this. Here's a safe way that our company has set up for you to do this. And here's the policy. And by the way, the next time you want to do something like this, do image creation or something. If you're a creative, then that is, copyright or licensing issues there. Here's a play area where you can do your experimentation. So all of those can be done, and then independently, the organization can also train their people. It doesn't have to be when they do bad things. They can just say, oh, we're in our industry, copyright and licensing is a big deal. And so here are all the things that we have set up. You can basically take this class or learn to use this model and we can teach you. So both education as well as policy enforcement. But to your point, this is a very real risk, and our product will catch it regardless of if it is on a personal tool or it is on a corporate tool.
Thank you. And when I'm listening to you, as you mentioned, three pillars, I also feel that this is not just for CIOs or CISOs or product managers, CEOs or developers. It's applicable to the whole organization. Anybody who is using AI. As in past, we have seen a lot of culture shift like DevOps, DevSecOps, SREs movements happen. Do you feel that for AI, so that we have right processing in place where developers are not just using whatever they tool they can use, whatever service they want to use, we don't have that very well structured model right now. I have also seen sometimes tools force you to bring that cultural change in the organization. First of all, so it's a twofold question. First of all, do you feel that we do need or we may need that cultural shift when it comes to AI consumption? And second is that how are tools like the one that you just mentioned, AI value realization solution, can become a catalyst in bring that cultural change within organizations, because you are kind of making organizations conscious about their AI consumption.
So I feel that standardization is missing at the moment, but I feel like standardization is coming. And there are two aspects to AI standardization, both of which are in process. So on the production side, like people that are building AI powered applications or business flows or specialized models and things like that, model ops and all of that is definitely already underway. And there's standardization, so where to inject guardrails and how to make sure that, those development paths are secure and governed. So that is actually a little further along than on the consumption side. Because there's also a handful of providers and the producers are always fewer than the consumers in mostly any field. Um, so on the other side, on the consumption side, there's less standardization and it is more of a Wild West. And so on the consumption side, it seems like many organizations are trying to go down the path of a sanctioned set of applications. Here are, the company approved ways in which, we would like you to use AI, especially for work. And so then there are tools like ours that funnel people through that without getting in the way. So most of what we do with security is invisible. right? We'll capture it, we'll fix it, it won't go out. And you don't have to do too much other than get educated from time to time. But then when an organization has a sanctioned path, we are actually able to intercept and send things down that sanctioned path. So I think that that is also coming. It isn't there yet. So the need for tools like ours is high on the security side. On the value realization side, we are actually creating the new paradigm. Like you said, right? Because of the tool, we are making sure that organizations are aware that there are these demand signals spread across. And before they start the process of developing new AI powered workflows with their product managers, those product managers are on the platform gathering information and creating their PRDs and things like that, right? So I completely agree with you. I think in the next couple of years, all of it is actually going to get much more streamlined, which will make it easy for everyone, right? Because you can then use it as a foundation.
So with this launch, what I have seen is that you're covering these three areas you mentioned: shadow AI, AI security, AI value. And if you look at the failure rate, almost 90%, does that also mean that 1 year from now, when you and I will sit down, you'll say, now the failure rate is 10% because now we have enabled companies to actually move from, POC to production. What changes are you envisioning will happen when the adoption of these technologies? You folks have started it, but what kind of shift you see may happen this year as organizations move AI in production and they also start looking at these serious problems?
No, I think we should see an improvement both in POC to production as well as in positive ROI projects. And those are two separate metrics, right? How many experiments actually get into production is one, and that's the 5 to 15%. The positive ROI metric is 4% right now. That's how many projects are actually paying off positive. So we think both should be improved. At least in our customer base, we see the numbers to be very different. We see very high POC to production conversion rates. And with this new solution, we're seeing good ROI improvements as well. I think in the grand scheme of things, pretty much on the model provider side and the agent studio side, you're also seeing providers create these metrics and build in these guardrails. So I think it's an industry-wide movement because many stakeholders are being burnt by the lack of ROI and the lack of POC to production, right? There's the hyperscalers. The hyperscalers are putting so much investment, right, in POCs. When they don't go into production, there's no payoff. Similarly with ROI. So lots of parties are pushing in the right direction. So I think a year later when we chat, we should see substantial improvement. I'm thinking like from 4 to 25%, 35% on ROI. I think from 10 to 15 to 50 to 60%. Because also, see, like it's been 2.5 years since CFOs have been pouring money. Now CFOs are like, okay, you know, I have 25,000 licenses for, 1,000 people. So who's actually using it? Who's not using it, right? So a lot of people are asking hard questions now.
I also want to know a bit about how, when I look at Portal 26, are we looking at products? Are we looking at services? How people can get started? Just walk us through that quickly.
Thank you for the question. So Portal26 is a product. It's a solution. It's a SaaS solution, but we do have a really easy first step, and this is an assessment. And because the product deploys very easily, our customers are able to turn us on, in like 30 minutes or so. And then as this thing runs, whether it's for a few hours or a few days, you get a very good first look at what's happening. So this notion of turning the lights on, we can do that very quickly. And for most, if not all of our customers, that in itself is really valuable. So we encourage people to just come and turn the lights on, see what's happening in your organization. And from there, if you feel like you want to take some steps towards better security or better use case selection, improved ROI, those are journeys you can take with us. But the turning the lights on bit is something we encourage everyone to do. So that would be a great place to start.
Arti, thank you for joining me and walking us through Portal 26's AI value realization solution. The gap between AI investment and ROI is one of the biggest challenges enterprises face today, and you folks are trying to solve that problem. So I look forward to chatting with you and learn more about what you folks are building. But I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swapnil. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your platform.
And for those watching, if you are facing similar challenges with your AI initiatives and trying to move beyond pilot purgatory, make sure to check out Portal26 and its value realization solution. And don't forget to subscribe to TFIR, like this video, and share it with your teams. Thanks for watching.